Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to talk about one of the most influential concepts in second language acquisition, which is interlanguage. And specifically, we are looking at the work of Larry Selinker, linguist who brought this idea to the forefront of the field. Before we get to Selinker, let's take a step back and set the scene. Second language acquisition is the field of linguistics that studies how people learn a language other than their native language. One of the central questions in second language acquisition is what exactly is happening in the learner's minds as they build up knowledge of a new language. Are they simply making mistakes? Are they translating from the first language? Or is something more systematic going on? The answer, it turns out, is the latter. And that's where interlanguage comes in. The term interlanguage was coined by Larry Selinker in 1972 in a landmark paper titled Interlanguage, published in the journal International Review of Applied Linguistics in Language Teaching. Selinker's core argument was that learners of a second language do not simply shift from their native language to the target language. Instead, they develop a separate, autonomous linguistic system, one that is neither the L1 nor the L2, but something in between. He called this system the interlanguage. It had its own internal logic, its own rules, and it changes over time as a learner is making progress. In his work, Selinker identified 5 central processes that shape the development of interlanguage. The first is language transfer. So the learner carries over rules or structures from the L1 into the L2. For example, a French speaker learning English might say, I am here since 3 hours, transferring the French use of the present tense with depuis. The second process is transfer of training, errors that arise from the way the language has been taught rather than from the learner's internal system. Third, we have strategies of second language learning, the conscious approaches a learner uses to tackle the new language, such as simplification or avoidance of complex structures. Fourth, we have strategies of second language communication, which is the ways learners adapt when they lack the vocabulary or grammar they need, for instance, using circumlocution. And fifth, the overgeneralization of target language rules. Applying a rule too broadly, like saying, I go to the store, by analogy with the regular past tense verbs. Perhaps the most widely discussed concept associated with Selinker is fossilization. Selinker observed that most adult learners never reach full native-like competence in a second language, and crucially, certain errors tend to persist over time, even in learners who are otherwise quite proficient in the L2. He called this phenomenon fossilization, the point at which specific features of the interlanguage become fixed and resistant to change, regardless of further input or instruction. A classic example would be a speaker who, after years of using English, still consistently omits the third person singular S, saying, she go to work every day. This is not random, this is a stabilized feature of that learner's interlanguage. Fossilization has been a controversial and debated concept, with later researchers questioning whether errors are ever truly permanent or simply highly persistent. Selinker's contribution to linguistics was transformative. Before his work, learners' errors were often viewed negatively, as failures or deviation from the target norm. Selinker reframed the entire question. Learner language is not defective, it is systematic. It deserves to be studied on its own terms. His framework opened the door to a whole research tradition in second language acquisition, influencing scholars like Carter, who had earlier introduced the notion of the built-in syllabus, and later researchers working on the development, consequences, and universal grammar, cognitive approaches to language learning, and so on. Today, the concept of interlanguage is considered foundational in applied linguistics and language teaching. So let's recap the key points. Interlanguage is the dynamic systematic linguistic system that learners construct as they acquire a second language. It was theorized by Selinker in 1972, and it is shaped by 5 main processes. It is characterized by the possibility of fossilization, where certain features become stable and persistent. And most importantly, interlanguage is not a sign of failure, it is a sign that learning is happening. Thank you very much for having watched this video, and stay tuned for more.